when I watch some of your videos on the Quora answers that they have that are in somewhat broken English and are like just these obvious, when you look at them, like, is it true that Xi Jinping is the greatest? And it's like, well, actually, he is.
That's Quora in a nutshell, right there. That's just Quora. Yeah.
Still waiting on Quora to answer me about that.
Yeah.
So when I look at that, I go, this is impossible to fall for. This must be for a domestic audience. What is happening outside that you have seen be effective on a Western audience?
So actually, that's a good segue. I think the Quora thing is a great thing to bring up because as laughable as it is to go to Quora and see an article say, like you said, is it true that Xi Jinping is the greatest? Why was China's COVID prevention so successful while the U.S. burned to the ground, right? Yeah. It's just these rhetorical questions that already answer themselves. And to see the user base have, I don't know, 10,000 articles under their belt that release them, within minutes of each other, to see those articles get upvoted by, what we suspect to be bot armies. You look at that and you think that's ridiculous, but what that serves, at least in our theory, after researching this, is that what this serves to do is that when you can populate Google search results and be the dominant force amongst those search results, you can actually tap into the majority of people's psyche. Because if someone's Googling something, let's say a good example was they want to learn about the genocide of Native Americans in the U.S. They want to learn about the history that we learn about in school, the very widely talked about topic in America's kind of dark history, right? China has managed to populate a lot of those search results with its own government sources, Quora articles, things like this.
Even better,
right?
When you search Uyghur genocide, the first result in Google was the Native American genocide.
Yes.
And the article that it was linking, the top result, was a Chinese government article.
Right. So what this serves to do is, let's say you don't even read into those, but if you can read or you kind of graze past these headlines, and the vast majority of them have a pro-Chinese government slant, then you've already kind of entered the psyche of people that aren't going to go through every single source and read through every ridiculously worded answer. What you've done is changed SEO or search engine optimization to be in your favor. And this serves two purposes. One, for the people that aren't going to look deeply into these things and realize that they're reading Chinese propaganda, or at least glancing at it. And number two, for the future of AI, the way the AI works, just a very, very simple way of doing things, is to gather data, to gather language, to gather points across the internet. So from there, you can shape how future search results are going to be. Let's be honest, we know that Google, the way that traditional Google works, is not going to be how search engines work in the future because of big data, because of machine learning, right? But if you can change and warp the majority of how AI sees things, or the majority of data that goes into AI to feed it to learn, then you've manipulated history completely, right? And we saw that a very good example of this is how China always referred to itself, or didn't really care if people called the Chinese government the CCP.
Yeah, it used to call itself that in official articles up until about 2017-ish.
Then all of a sudden in 2017 and onwards, we see this massive push from the Chinese government to say, you can't call the Chinese government the CCP anymore. That's racist. That comes from like Western forces that want to see the downfall of China. We are called the CPC, right? So now they've tried to have this big rebrand called the CPC, or the Communist Party of China. Now, officially, technically in English, it would be called that, but they never really cared. It was just kind of colloquially known.
They even admit in government literature online in Chinese that either or is okay.
Yes.
They admit that, but now they've pushed this narrative. And the reason they've done that, obviously, is to whitewash the past.
Yes.
It's like a criminal changing his identity. Because now if you search CCP, you'll come up with a list of like Tiananmen Square Massacre.
50 years of articles.
All 50 years of bad and good things that China has been involved in. But if you type in CPC, it'll only bring in the last couple of years of very curated Chinese government articles.
Right.
Because no one calls it CPC.
No, which they've managed to dominate search engine optimization with.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, as to answer your question, as a very successful way to manipulate people. And a very successful way that Chinese propaganda has worked is the sheer brute force of it.
Yeah.
The sheer use of technology. And it works so much to their benefit because
it spans,
they block the majority of the internet, over 70% of the internet. Everything is blocked. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all these things for their own populace. But what they do is on an official level is use thousands and thousands, if not millions of accounts sponsored by the Chinese government on Western platforms to manipulate the algorithm and make sure that people are fed positive messages about the Chinese government. And that's something we have such a hard time combating because
we can't.
We're independent voices. We don't have bot accounts. We're just two guys on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
The spamming is a big thing. I mean, think about this. Imagine you've got an article and somebody writes a comment on there which is truthful. Says like, I was there, it's true, what's in the article. If you have 1,000 people downvoting that comment and just spamming something about, oh, China is great or something, nobody will ever read that real comment, you see? So it's more just a brute force way of pushing an opinion out there and getting rid of dissenting opinions.
I have one current example if you have time for this. Just
Absolutely,
real quick. It's something I'm working on right now. It was something that it was affecting me. And I, as a guy that watches Chinese propaganda to make videos to make sure that people are getting the truth, it actually was affecting me. I kept seeing this word. It was de-dollarization. I'm actually making a video about it
I'm
right
so
now.
glad you touched on this because this has been my big worry about China. Oh my God, we're going to lose. Please continue.
Yeah.
So as somebody that's not super savvy on economics, I kind of pushed this topic down the road. People kept asking me, hey, can you talk about this de-dollarization thing? I'm like, yeah. I'm not an expert. I have to get some experts to teach me about it first, right? Finally, the day came where I'm like, you know what? I keep seeing this de-dollarization thing everywhere, like on my YouTube feed, on my Twitter feed, on Instagram even. People keep sending me TikTok videos about it. I'm like, what is going on with this de-dollarization thing? So I start looking into it, and I started asking economists about it. And what it is BRICS, which is China's kind of new multipolar world idea. It's like they're going to have, Brazil, Russia, China, India. They're going to have South Africa. They're going to have these countries kind of tied together to fight off the U.S. hegemony, to make sure the U.S. doesn't control the world. They'll have their own kind of economic situation. And what's going on is they've created this idea of de-dollarization that maybe in the very near future, or right now, it's unfolding right now, that people are going to start trading, or countries are going to start trading in yuan, in Chinese RMB, so the Chinese currency, as opposed to the dollar standard that most countries have used for foreign exchange. And I'm talking to people about this, and these economists are like, what are you talking about? That's not happening at all, sending me graphs and things. The last report in 2022 was that 88% of the world's foreign exchanges are still being done in the US dollar, which is even higher than some of within the past 30 years of some of these foreign exchange figures within using the US currency as the dominant currency for foreign exchange. So we're looking at a situation where China, after I looked at it, is pumping out hundreds, if not thousands of articles, is getting influencers to talk about de-dollarization, to throw this word around. We even saw it on Russian state media over and over again, to the point where if you don't look into it, like myself, you just start thinking it's the norm. Oh, de-dollarization, I'm not really into economics, so I guess people are using the dollar less. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, I guess the Chinese yuan is becoming more powerful. I'm not going to look into it, right? I Google it. Maybe I look at some cursory results, and it's all Chinese-sponsored content.
Yeah.
And you realize very quickly it is a Chinese government spy op that Russia is tagging along on. And then when you start to break it down, you realize that you've been affected by this almost apathy of not really wanting to look into it, but almost a fear of missing out too. Because if somebody else brings it up in conversation and says, oh, you hear about this de-dollarization thing? You go, oh, yeah, I heard about that. It's crazy, And eventually it becomes solidified in your mind to where you didn't look into it. You've passively consumed hours and hours of Chinese propaganda about the topic to where you now think maybe that's the case.